Retired Colonel Rick Johnson. This is his 4th year coming here doing this for us, and we do not pay him anything. 2nd year in a row, he's brought his son Brian Johnson, and he's going to tell you a little bit about all these things that he has here today, and a little bit about the redo of the museum. And my class, I will talk to you about. You guys always ask me about extra credit. We'll probably make extra credit this semester where if you go out and do some selfies like you guys do at the museum, you might get some extra credit. Is there a cost to get in the museum?
Ladies, do you think I could have you move your seats back here and then people could sit down in the front there? Would that be okay? So if would you move your chair back and then people could sit on that?
Listen up, and if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'll be more than happy to answer. All right, thank you very much.
Gunner, you can come on over here.
With regard to the museum, we focus primarily on military history as it relates to the state of Idaho, from the territorial period up to the present time, regardless of the branch of service. As I said, we're the only museum that does not charge an admission in the valley. Our operating hours are posted on the whiteboard there. And if you have a continuing interest in military history, I'd encourage you to pay us a visit. If you'd been in the museum before last year and you were to go out there today, you'd notice a completely different building. We had a grand reopening last June to reacquaint ourselves with the public after the Idaho National Guard and the state of Idaho invested about $850,000 in a remodel of the building. It's a very high curb appeal building. From the outside, and instead of looking like some old abandoned warehouse on the other side of the railroad tracks. But it's a fine facility both externally and inside the museum. So again, I'd encourage you to visit if you have an interest in it. All right, so today what we're going to do is try to give you a perspective of what it might have been like to have been an American infantry soldier serving in combat, European Theater of Operations from June 1944 through the end of the war in May 1945. The basic building block of the Army is the rifle squad, then as well as it is today. There were normally at full strength 12 men, but the actual battlefield foxhole strength, based on casualties and other factors, could reduce that squad as little as 6 or 7 soldiers. And we'll look at some of the weapons and primary equipment that they had in use on the front line. So what we're going to start with is a look at the basic uniform that Brian is wearing and some of the individual equipment that you might have seen a soldier wearing or carrying at this time. The basic uniform is a 2-piece wool shirt and trouser combination. Wool is a very popular fabric in use by most Western European countries. It's usually not very expensive to raise the flock of sheep to provide the raw material. It was very easy to turn into fabric, and it was also fairly low cost to manufacture at a textile mill. Even when wet, wool still gives a pretty good insulation value to the soldier wearing it. The uniform is cut very large, almost baggy, to allow a little bit of air movement underneath the uniform, as well as to give the soldier quite a bit of freedom of movement on the battlefield. One main difference in identifying whether a soldier is an officer or an enlisted soldier is where they wear their rank. In his case, you see 3 stripes or a chevron worn on the bicep, both sides of the uniform, which identifies him as a sergeant or the basic non-commissioned officer who was the assistant squad leader of that 12-man unit. Officers would wear their insignia on the collarbone. One common item that all soldiers wear in the uniform is represented by the insignia on his left shoulder. There were different colors, different shapes in that. but that's simply used to identify where that soldier's assigned today. This one's blue and white. Those are traditional infantry colors. The tomahawk patch represents a corps in the United States Army on that time. All right, the footwear that he is wearing consists of two components: a leather ankle-length shoe, not a boot, a shoe that had fairly good water repellency. It could be resoled and reheeled, and it was worn with a pair of canvas lace-up leggings. The leggings were designed to help keep the trousers tucked in, as well as prevent the intrusion of sand, gravel, other debris into the shoe. And you can see by the lacing on it that it was a fairly cumbersome piece of equipment for the soldier to put on and take off on a regular basis. The infantry soldier's primary mobility on the battlefield are his feet. It doesn't take too much marching in weather conditions for your feet to start sweating. And if you're not performing maintenance on your feet on a regular basis, you're going to see the appearance of some very interesting science projects appear between your toes. Trench foot, immersion foot. Well, for a soldier to unlace the legging, take the shoe off, take the damp or wet socks off, dry his feet, take care of any blisters, powder his feet, put on dry socks, put the shoes back on, and then relace the legging wasn't something you were going to do in a couple of minutes. Consequently, soldiers didn't do the best job of taking care of their feet. So the Army started issuing a new piece of footwear in mid-war that was designed to make it easier for the soldier to take care of their feet. It was leather, which I don't know, I still haven't found a good answer in the research on why they made it a reverse leather shoe, like a combat hush puppy. It lost its water repellency. It could still be resoled, rehealed. It was an easy shoe to break in, and with the legging being replaced by this leather cuff, it was much easier, quicker, take it off, put it on. This is what gave it its nickname, the double buckle boot. The only way that this boot would keep your feet dry is if you wore a set of overshoes on top of it. It was a good idea, but we just didn't quite engineer it as well as it could have been. Headgear that was issued to the soldier in a non-combat environment included this baseball cap style fatigue cap, or called the herringbone quill cap, made out of cotton. And it was issued with a new uniform mid-war that was designed to supplement, not necessarily replace, the wool uniform. Then, as well as now, the American uniform is based on a layering concept. You may see the soldier wearing as little as the two-piece cotton uniform, t-shirt, shorts, or all the way up into winter, t-shirt, underwear, long johns, wool uniform, maybe a larger size of this on top of it, light jacket, overcoat, to provide as many layers of insulation as the soldier needed based on the weather. This uniform was very popular. Excuse me, I've been taking some meds and my mouth gets dry very quick. Sometimes a little hard to hear. But this was a purpose-designed combat uniform, where this was actually part of an original early war dress uniform. The herringbone quill uniform had large pockets on the chest, and on each thigh here you had a cargo pocket, which gave the soldier additional room to carry the items that he needed on the battlefield. These trousers were the idea of what's still popular today in menswear, cargo pants. It was also issued with a variety of overgarments. In this case, this is an early war light combat jacket. It wasn't a very effective windbreaker. It had some limited water repellency and limited insulation value with a thin wool liner. It wasn't very popular because it just didn't do a good job of helping the soldier keep warm. So those enterprising GIs who were able to acquire them like to get a combat jacket that was issued to tank crews. Tanker jacket fit very close to the body, knitted collar and cuffs, also lined with a wool-type blanket material. That was a higher level of insulation value. It was a better windbreaker, and it had a little better water repellency than the earlier jacket. The headgear that Brian is wearing was in field use by the Army prior to World War II, called campaign hat. It's the only piece of American military headgear that was distinctively American in origin. It dates back to the forage caps worn from the Civil War period. The yellow hat cord denotes this branch of service, in this case cavalry. And then during that time frame in the late 30s and early 40s, we transitioned from horse cavalry to mechanized vehicle-based cavalry. The metal insignia above the cord is what's called a distinctive unit insignia, which identifies the regiment that he is assigned to. The pin he's wearing represents the 113th Cavalry, which is a unit still in service today with the Iowa National Guard. The equipment that he's wearing is based around the cotton belt that you see. There were two basic types of belts used by American soldiers. The plain belt, which is called the pistol belt, had the grommets on it where you could affix those items of equipment that you personally needed to do your job on the battlefield. And we'll take a look at those in just a second. The standard belt issued to a rifleman was a 10-pocket cartridge belt that allowed him to carry the ammunition he needed for his service rifle. It also had grommets on it where you could attach additional equipment on the bottom edge. His pistol belt is supported by a set of suspenders, which help distribute his load more evenly and prevents the belt from ending up around his ankles while he's running on the battlefield. On the left front part of his cartridge or his pistol belt is a 3-pocket ammunition pouch that provides ammunition for his sidearm that we'll look at shortly. As you move around to the left, he has a set of wire cutters. With the D-Day invasion and the extensive use of German barbed wire obstacles on the beaches, a lot of soldiers in the assault waves carried these handheld wire cutters to breach those obstacles on them. The next item is a 5-pocket canvas ammo pouch that holds 20-round magazines for his submachine gun, which we'll see shortly. Right square in the middle of his back is one item that was common to all soldiers regardless of the job they performed, and that was their first aid pouch. Inside that you had a 2-piece metal zip strip combat dressing that was used to apply that first level of medical treatment to a buddy on the battlefield. These had a small package of what was called sulfa powder in them. It was a pre-penicillin medication, not really an antibiotic as we think of today. The powder was normally sprinkled on the wound. It did inhibit the chance that wound was going to become infected, or the term septic. It had one drawback because it was a petroleum distillate. A lot of soldiers had an allergy to sulfa. Fortunately, by mid-war, penicillin was available, very effective combat antibiotic to help soldiers survive wounds much better on that. There were also tablets that could be taken orally, but standard battlefield dressing had the powder on it. As he continues to move around, on his right hip is his canteen. You've got a canvas pouch, a 1-quart metal canteen, and then the canteen stacks inside a folding handle cup. GIs use these for a number of purposes besides drinking. My time in the military, I've cooked out of these, I've shaved out of them, even taken a mini bath out of them. Just make sure you rinse the soap out before you put your coffee in it. But pretty handy tool in the hands of a soldier. Normally in Europe, you'd see a soldier carrying one canteen, which was barely minimal to, especially during the warmer months, to meet the soldiers' hydration requirements. Pacific theater soldiers were normally issued 2, but water was always a problem for the soldier on the battlefield. On his right hip is the sidearm. We'll look at 2 different types of sidearms that the American Army issued in World War II. Last piece on his belt on the upper right-hand chest is a battle dressing issued specifically for D-Day. Inside it, you'd find 3 items: a combat compressed battle dressing, morphine ampule, and a canvas tourniquet to help staunch the flow of blood. Most soldiers carried their own morphine, which, that's not really the practice in the military today. Because of the drug properties in that, control of morphine on the battlefield is very tightly managed. The medics usually were going to find. If a soldier were to be critically wounded, once you treated them for shock and stopped the flow of bleeding, for pain management, usually the attending soldier or medic would administer morphine. The standard rule of thumb was no more than 2 ampules. And then normally if you had to move on and leave the soldier with other wounded, waiting for the medics to show up, take a little bit of the soldier's blood and put a red M on the forehead so that the medic knows they were administered morphine. The other thing that was done so the medic knew how much morphine had been administered, the needles were stuck through the collar point and bent over so the empty ampules there, the medic knew 2 shots. Another rule of thumb is that for a soldier who had a head wound, is not to administer morphine, because that's a quick way to kill that soldier. Okay, any quick questions on uniform and individual equipment components that you wear? Okay. If you were a leader on the battlefield, like he is, you might see that soldier wearing a pair of binoculars for observation on the battlefield, trying to acquire the enemy before he is seen. Normally, map and compass, so you can navigate on the battlefield so your unit's where it's supposed to be. And then if you're able to identify an enemy unit, you can plot them on the map and determine a direction, and then use your communication system to request artillery or mortar fire to engage the enemy. Next to a weapon, a leader's probably next most important piece of equipment is a communications device. The American Army in World War II was very lavishly equipped with very reliable, state-of-the-art radio systems. You didn't have to travel very far on the battlefield to find a soldier with a radio. The handheld handy-talkie model, push to talk, release to listen, one-hand operation, to radios worn like backpacks, jeeps, half-tracks, tanks. A lot of ground vehicles had radios. Small aircraft that we use for artillery spotting all had radios. They were very efficient in all terms of technology, with the exception of the battery power. In the mid-1940s, you didn't see long-life batteries like we're familiar with today. Energizer Bunny, the rechargeable lithium batteries, they were a long time into the future from 1943-44. Most of the batteries were carbon-based dry cell batteries with a short life. Usually 3 to 4 hours of use before you depleted that battery and had to replace it. So again, that's another thing that, well, I got to carry spare batteries on top of it. Most leaders carried a military flashlight because war is a 24-hour proposition. This design was adopted from a mid-1930s Boy Scout device called the Anglehead flashlight. Still manufactured, still in use today, about the 7th or 8th generation. They could be used for signaling. If you knew Morse code, you could send your dots and your dashes by light, send a message, and just to help you operate on the battlefield more efficiently. One other item up front here that was issued particularly for D-Day to the assault troops coming in by landing craft as well as the airborne troops parachuting in was a waterproof carrying bag for the gas mask. In the planning for the D-Day invasion, there was a great concern among the Americans and the British, believing that it was very likely the Germans would use chemical weapons to stop the invasion at the beaches. So we issued a waterproof bag to protect the charcoal filter on the mast. But